Okay, guys, I want everyone to think of someone in the royal family. Can you have any examples?
The Queen.
Prince Harry.
Notice how you all said somebody in the British royal family. There are royal families all across the world back in the day. But since American media has kind of publicized the British royal family, that's all we think of now. And this is due to their long history, their unique etiquette, and their difference in positions that they hold today versus what they held back then. Now you may ask, Kaden, why would you want to listen to me speak for 12 minutes about the British royal family? And it's because me, Finn, and Chloe have done extensive research on this topic to give you guys the best speech that we could give you. So, Chloe, can you introduce our main guest?
Today we're going to be talking to you about the unique culture of the British royal family. Starting with the history of past royals, onto the history of government, royal etiquette, royal guards, the family's role in society today, and most recently the tragic death of Queen Elizabeth and its impact on people all over the world.
Alrighty, so we're going to start off with some of the most famous, well-known people in the British royal family throughout the years. So King John, who was known as one of the worst English leaders of all time, he was also ironically the one who signed the Magna Carta. So that's pretty cool. And then we have King Henry and his 6 wives, more specifically Anne Boleyn, who played a pivotal role in the establishment of the Church of England. And then finally, the beloved Queen Elizabeth, who served for 70 years, which is longer than almost all of our parents who have been alive. So specifically going into King John, he was a terrible man. According to BBC History, he imprisoned his ex-wife to marry someone of a higher social standard. He was accused of killing his nephew, and he would starve all his opponents. Now, John loved war, and war is expensive. So to pay for this war, he would tax his own people a lot. So far to the point where they couldn't afford to live, and when they didn't pay the tax, he would just take their land. The people didn't like this. The people didn't like John. So what they ended up doing was revolting, and they took over London, and they forced him to sign the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta leads me into my next point. So the Magna Carta was signed in 1215 in June, and it was the first ever written document that kind of limited the power of the king and the royal authority. We use it now, like the United States used it to form our Declaration of Independence. The French used it after the French Revolution because it was so good to give power to not just one person and kind of a democratic thing. So a clause that's in the Magna Carta that still works today is that no man shall be arrested or imprisoned except by the judgment of their equals and by the law of the land. So after the Magna Carta was signed, it gave power more to the Parliament, but that was not enough for England because there was still a monarchy all the way up until 1669. In 1669, the Parliament staged what we call the Glorious Revolution, and this turned Britain and England into a constitutional monarchy, which it is now today. So a constitutional monarchy is where the king and the royal family is more of a ceremonial role instead of a political role, so they're not allowed to have any bias in politics, and they can't really speak on that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, my time has come, and I have to give it over to Chloe, who will now introduce you guys the etiquette and the royal guard.
The royal family abides by a multitude of rules that are considered a norm to them, and for people, especially in the United States, it's very, very weird. One thing that I thought was super interesting is the dining table etiquette they have. So the main thing that everyone has to follow, any age of royals have to do this, is they have to follow when the queen eats. So whenever the queen starts eating, everyone has to start eating at that exact same time. You most definitely can't start eating before her, and definitely not after her. This means whenever she finishes, everyone has to finish eating as well. So if you aren't full yet and you haven't finished eating, but the queen is done eating, that means you immediately have to stop eating, just an etiquette of the queen. Another thing that's really interesting is when they leave the table, they just say, "Excuse me." For me, at my house, if I was leaving the table to go do something, I would tell my family what I was doing. I would say, "I'm going to the bathroom," or "I'm going to grab something," or "I'm taking a call." But no matter what they're doing, if they're leaving the table, they simply just say, "Excuse me," and that's known as leaving the table without a fuss, is the rule it's called in the royal family. When they do leave the table though, they must cross their utensils. They do this to let the waitstaff know that they're not finished eating yet. If they don't cross their utensils, then waitstaff within seconds will immediately take it away. Also, when they come back to their meal after leaving the table, even if their utensils are crossed, if they come back and the queen is done eating, then they cannot finish their meal. So they try not to leave during the meals at all, but when they do, they just say, "Excuse me." Another form of etiquette is the dress code. Especially for women, they have to dress modestly. They have to cover up especially like their chest area. Princess Diana and Meghan Markle were known for kind of breaking this norm a little bit, but Princess Diana was also known for covering it up very well. So if you look up any picture of Princess Diana exiting any vehicle at all, you'll always see her, like in this picture, covering her chest so she won't be caught with a compromising picture for press. So she did that a lot when she was wearing any low shirt, which she technically wasn't allowed to wear. The next thing is there are absolutely no mini skirts allowed. Queen Elizabeth established this rule because she just preferred that every woman in the royal family had to have knee-length or maxi dresses or skirts, just because it's more modest. And yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk very briefly about the Royal Guard. So they were established in the 17th century to protect the exiled King Charles II. And they did not have their trademark uniforms, but actually at the Battle of Waterloo, in their victory against Napoleon, they took inspiration from the French uniforms during the battle and adopted the bearskin hats, which according to British Heritage is actually still how they manufacture them, and the company that manufactures them is kept secret. There's 6 divisions, each run by a different royal, and the actual battalions usually consist of elites of the British military, usually praised soldiers or soldiers that have gone through tours and just many years of service and accomplishments for the British government. They must maintain stoicism at all times, and there's many videos on the internet that typically you see the guard either being very rude to tourists or they always have to stay in their positions, and their shifts typically are around 2 hours at a time and then a 4-hour break.
So the role in society today. As Kaden touched on in her introduction, when people think of the royal family, they obviously think of the British royal family, and this is influenced by American media. So in America, we kind of view the royal family as more of celebrities rather than respected figures of authority. For people in the UK, they look at the royal family as respected figures, just like how some of us may look at people in the White House and think of them as a respected figure rather than an A-list celebrity. The reason we think of them as an A-list celebrity is because they're all over tabloids and popular news stations, just because it's such a different culture. As we talked about before, the etiquette, that's something nobody in the United States does. And their extravagant lifestyle, from clothes, fashion, jewelry, and all of the rules. Part of the reason it's even more dramatized in American media today is Meghan Markle, because she is an American citizen who then turned into a British royal when she married Prince Harry. Most recently, a Netflix documentary came out, which some of you may have watched, about her and Prince Harry leaving the royal family due to the cultural differences she had to face being an American citizen. She got a lot of backlash, not only from people in the UK, but people in the United States as well. When she would come back and visit the States, she would get harassed, her family would get harassed. She also has a half-sister that she hasn't spoken to since she was probably 5 years old, that also would get interviewed and would say horrible things about her, even though they hadn't talked since they were 5 years old, just because the media was so obsessed with her and with the royal family. They wanted to get any news, bad or good, onto the front page of a magazine. Also in the documentary, they touched on the Queen's death, which leads me into my next topic.
So the death of the Queen was a very significant landmark in history, mainly because it was a moment where a lot of people recognized the accomplishments of Queen Elizabeth. She had reigned for 70 years, which is the longest reigning monarch in British history and the second longest in world history. And typically the monarchy was kept much more secretive, and they were treated as a whole other class system that was above the Commonwealth. And throughout her reign, through either more news coverage or opening up Buckingham Palace to tourism, Queen Elizabeth had made the monarchy more familiar with their like the common people, and as well as American media. And many of her accomplishments include maintaining peace with the Irish Republic, and being the first royal ever to speak at the House of Congress. She also embodied a shift in British culture, such as removing male heritage of the crown, by making it so that only the eldest child, regardless of gender, is the one who inherits the crown. And ultimately, with her death, whether she was criticized or loved, her death was definitely felt around the world. So in conclusion, today we introduced you to the British royal family. We went through their history, such as things like the Magna Carta and many significant events that created their government, a very unique government in the modern world. We went through the etiquette in both the royal family and the royal guards, and many just smaller quirks that exist still within British culture. And finally, their role in society, from being a closed-off monarchy that was an upper class to now representing more celebrities and being the central points in a lot of American magazines and things like that. And finally, the Queen's death and going through her accomplishments through her 70-year-long reign. And the reason to remember would ultimately be that Chloe made us do this topic.